This was a strange experience for me and the audience in the other room. I just moderated a spiritualities and psychedelic panel and was walking directly out of the panel discussion, handing it over to my colleague Marvin to come into a completely other topic, which I'm very proud that we hosted here at the conference. How could psychedelics in any way play a role in changing the minds of business leaders? What a strange question, isn't it? So welcome a group of colleagues here that will discuss that question. So the whole conference is a little bit about change theories. Of course, there are big claims in psychedelic, in the psychedelic field. Psychedelics will change everything. The climate crisis, and the love between people, maybe the Ukraine war, and everything that we don't like. But there is a reality to what psychedelics can do, of course. It's not these overly extensive claims, but that's what we want to work about with you, with the audience, and with the speakers. Which influence could a psychedelic experience have on the way that we perceive our work field, how we proceed through our careers, yeah, how we change the norms maybe in our businesses? These are the questions. And for tackling these questions, we have a number of presentations. And now I give it to Stefan Beiten. So Stefan, can you say one sentence, maybe two or three, about yourself?
I've been a failing forward entrepreneur all my life, father of 3 + 2. And basically, I always say I put my ADD to professionalism. My background is actually, I'm a lawyer, historian, and always wanted to become a constitutional lawyer to rewrite the European Constitution and give it a true foundation. Huh?
You didn't make it.
No, I stopped my thesis after 200 pages, and that was the foreword, and I knew, no, I'm not going to become a professor. So, failed that, and instead I started to produce actually animation and movies. Has anybody grown up with Simsala Grimm? That was my first animation series. And then a few documentary features, actually together with my long-term friend and partner, Nikolaus, Weil. We had a media company together and various others, various fields. I basically dabbled in a lot of fields, besides being a lawyer for a few years, investment banker for a few years, but mostly entrepreneur. So that was far too long, but I would much rather like to introduce my co-panelist. Everyone knows Henrik, of course, but Dr. Daphne, Henrik, I must say, totally impressed by Daphne, especially about one field. You revolutionized with your thesis about how immigration positively impacts society and how that actually works together. I actually called you an anti-Saracen. That guy who remembers Berlin politics once had a book written about the opposite, and you disproved him due to the detail. Really proved how immigration really benefits society at a massive scale if it's done right. So you have a long background as, well, not only mother of 4, I have no idea how you do that. You've been with McKinsey, and you're a successful serial entrepreneur, so Daphne. And Nikolaus, Weil I mentioned, we actually went to law school together. And that is enough for you to basically run. You can still run. But we've had a long standing career together in mostly film, in the field of movie production. Also a lawyer, music lawyer by background. And, well, a world citizen, because you're actually born in Switzerland, you grew up in somewhere in Africa and US, and English was actually your first language, and then you learned German. Still learning. And then Loes Fokker from Amsterdam, a clinical psychologist, organizational psychologist, and system therapist by background, and member of the board of the Argonauts. So Loes has been advising C-suite boards all around the planet and basically pushing through this system therapy approach towards there is more than Excel spreadsheets. And that is what my talk will be about. All right. Having said that, I think, Daphne, may I hand over to you?
Thank you. We'll get there. Is it on?
Yes.
Can you turn up the volume? It worked before. We'll get there. Just a second. No sound, no words. Okay, we'll master it. So what I ask you to do now, because we don't have sound, is to imagine sound. Imagine yourselves being an American. There are lianas. They are all around me. Their shades are green. Some bits of purple. They fade away. Small, beautiful mosaics appear. They're blue, red, yellow, white. Embrace the Turkish, German, Greek, Persian goddess. Live your identity. The lianas, they appear again. Oh, there's a yellow eye over there. Ooh, another one down here. Wow, they're playing hide and seek. Their two eyes, they look straight into mine. I am in the African savannah, next to a powerful lioness. A feeling of strength moves through my body from my toes up to my head. This powerful lioness walks elegantly along her path with her mighty paws. Nothing and nobody will disturb her. I welcome you all to my talk on the expansion of consciousness. The expansion of consciousness expressed through entrepreneurial action in service to humanity. Developing a culture of consciousness in the realm of socially impactful businesses always begins with the consciousness of the leader. And for that, leaders need to have a deeper understanding of themselves and who they truly are. Today, I will guide you through a very, very personal journey, guiding you through highlights, through moments in my life that highlight blockages that I had to release in order to understand my purpose, define my values, and build companies that I hope will serve humanity for the better. But in order to do that, I would like to invite each and every one in this room to create a safe space. A safe space to authentically share among one another and to reflect deeply. And that would mean that we have no judgment in this room, that there are no repercussions on what we share among each other, and that we have each other's back and support each other with unconditional love. Can I have an agreement from everybody by snapping their fingers, please? This is wonderful. Thank you. And I would also like to invite you into an active listening experience. So if there's anything that holds true to you or that resonates with your heart, please snap with your fingers. Let's try it one more time. You guys are doing a phenomenal job. Wonderful. My name is Daphne, which stems from the Greek mythological saga of Apollo being deeply in love with her, but Daphne trying to escape and begging her father to save her, who then transforms her into a mortal. My parents opted for this name because it would work in both my father's German and my mother's Turkish heritage. And sure, this could have been the beginning of a flourishing journey of a little girl bridging the German and Turkish culture and bringing a different nuance to the early 1980s highly diverse Turkish sex worker image in Germany. But this bridge was not yet very stable. I was so excited when my father shared the story of how he first met me. He entered the hospital room and saw this tiny baby bundle. My eyes, they lit up. But then my heart sank when he shared with me that my mother apologized to him for me turning out to be a girl and not the firstborn boy. What is so wrong with me being a girl? Why am I not good enough? These doubts regarding my existence and my worthiness and my activities, they remain for a while. Has there ever been a time in your life when you felt not good enough for who you were? That was your favorite. But despite this bridge's instability, there was some bricks and mortar that were added. My parents tried to raise me in both cultures, with my mother speaking Turkish and my father German. But this only sustained for about 2 years until my little brother was born, and my mother realized that we would only stand a chance of integrating and succeeding in Germany if we were to speak the language fluently. And so she quit speaking German and Turkish to us, and even done in the best interest of our development, some parts of my identity were constrained. But these 2 years of ingraining the Turkish language gave me a basic understanding and a capacity to learn this language easily. And step by step, an urge came up in me that I really wanted to learn the language. And so I decided that I'd take Turkish language classes at the Volkshochschule in Düsseldorf, which is a school for the public. But unfortunately, I wasn't allowed to go there because I was only 15 and not 16 years of age. My heart was racing when I went up to the registration counter and the kind lady handed me an application form. My fingers were shivering when I filled in the form. Would anybody find out about the huge lie that I was about to make? And I changed my birth year. Just a couple of weeks later, I found myself every Wednesday evening taking these language classes with adults 20 plus years older than I was at that time, learning and improving my Turkish on this, at that point, unconscious quest to find parts of my identity. Sorry, now I quickly have to take a look at. And this inner call for connecting to my Turkish heritage, it came up again and again. This voice appeared, and it eventually led me to pursuing my PhD to understand how migrant entrepreneurs perceive business opportunities. And I remember the day where I sat at my desk just analyzing my recent calculations, and the data revealed that migrant entrepreneurs have the capacity to see more business opportunities than non-migrants. Interestingly, national migrants have an almost as high rate of opportunity identification than international migrants. A tingling feeling arose in my body, and my mind answered, "Stop! You are a researcher, you must remain neutral." But I couldn't let the butterflies come up when I realized that non-migrants, those who have never migrated anywhere, but who have more migrants around them, start to see more business opportunities. It was a sigh of hope, of a potential for more peace, of an opportunity to develop more innovative thinking in our societies.
Can everyone hear me? I can also talk without the microphone because of the streaming. Okay, with the microphone. Let me just put that up here. Ja, willst du das hier drauf haben? Good morning, everybody. Happy to see that the room's so filled. A few minutes ago, I still thought, wow, we're going to have more people on the panel than in the room, which reminded me of my time when I used to tour with a band and we actually had more guys on the stage. That's when you know you're in trouble. But anyway, first of all, Daphne, thank you for sharing your personal story, which I think also models what a conscious leader should also be about, which is what I want to talk about. First of all, I'm really grateful to be here with this panel and at this conference. I was asked short term to actually replace someone, speaking of band experience. I'm sort of the stand-in act. And what I want to talk about today is conscious leadership and trauma-informed leadership. I speak of a little bit of statistics and data and research, but also the one thing that Stefan didn't mention, I today work as a HR tech entrepreneur, but I'm also a leadership coach. I used to run the Singularity University franchise, which spent a lot of time working with exponential mindsets, more in the technology space. So I had a lot of my fair share of working with executives, with leaders, and a lot of stuff that just didn't work. Also, I work from an experience of having suffered through burnout. I work through the experience of having worked in toxic environments and also, quite honestly, having been, I think, something of a toxic leader myself and gone through a very painful journey, which took a lot of courage. Part of that was also my psychedelic experience. What I want to address in my, I think it's called a lightning talk, is more the problem, and then while we go back into the panel, maybe I'll have a little bit more experience, opportunity to share how also psychedelics have helped me transform. Just to share a few stats with you, and I'm assuming most of you read articles about burnout. 60%, according to a McKinsey study of last year, of surveyed employees report mild to high burnout symptoms. 1 in 4 employees report rates of toxic behavior at work. And with 73% in that same study, toxic behavior is the most common reason for employees to quit and leave within 3 to 6 months. I think these are warning signs and cautionary tales of employers, leaders understanding that it's not about fixing the individual, but creating meaningful, sustainable change in the organization itself. The interesting thing is a lot of CEOs and leaders actually recognize that, 85% to be precise. And they spend a lot of money in HR budgets on leadership programs, on resilience programs, on yoga training, corporate wellness. And by the way, I think the fact that there's more being spent on that is not a bad thing. But the interesting thing, it fails because most of these programs, number one, overlook context. They focus too much on the individual and again, less on the organization. I recently read an interesting quote on the matter where it said, you can't yoga your way out of a toxic environment, right? And again, I think it's good if you have the opportunity, but it brings me to a leadership model that I've been working with over the past 2 years, which is, I would say was life-changing for me, and it's called conscious leadership. It goes deeper and is more sustainable. By design, conscious leadership aims to create a much deeper and more sustainable leadership experience. And the paradigm that conscious leadership uses is basically a line. There's above the line behavior for leaders and there's below the line. Typically, what a toxic leader does who operates below the line comes out of a space of victimness, defensiveness, closeness, fear, ego, and generally narcissistic behavior. Conscious leaders, however, operate from above the line as a place of empathy, openness, oneness, and curiosity. Key behavior characteristics are awareness, radical responsibility, understanding that you can't just put the blame on others, but everything that happens around you is at some point, directly or indirectly, an outcome of your own behavior. They can very clearly distinguish between context and content. So content in terms of what I'm talking about, and context, how I talk about it. They are open to shifting their thinking, learning through curiosity, and very honestly distinguishing between fact and fiction. They commit to uncompromising candor by engaging in missing conversations, asking the tough questions, both themselves but also others, and probably most of all, they come from an opinion or a perspective of we rather than me. Conscious leadership as a meaning-making layer allows for a deeper sense of collective trust and purpose. It's not just bumper sticker talk, but it's continuous, deliberate, and repetitive practice to hone and to integrate that behavior into a skill set. It becomes a way of life and deeply ingrained as a model of the world. An increasing number of business leaders actually see conscious leadership now more and more as a priority. You probably read about companies, great examples like Patagonia or Southwest Airlines, that try to embrace this thinking and leadership style, where both sustainability and profitability of businesses are accounted for. And I very often hear the whole mantra of people over purpose. To me, it's not that much of a binary choice, because I truly believe that if you embrace conscious leadership, your business can have both a profitable bottom line, but also a workplace built on collective and deep purpose, as well as trust. And by the way, on a side note, research also shows that businesses that pursue this kind of leadership model have a positive impact on the environment, on society. They have a strong reputation that it attracts customers, investors, and most of all, also employees, and they have greater employee engagement, retention, and satisfaction. But beyond these more transactional metrics, what I'd like to share with you is something that goes to a deeper dimension of conscious leadership, which is something called trauma-informed leadership, a specific leadership model that addresses trauma in the workplace and helps create trauma-responsive organizations. Most people actually don't understand how tightly trauma and leadership are connected to one another. They're the big T traumas, and then there are the small t traumas, which might not meet the clinical standard of what a trauma really is, but nonetheless, they have a very massive impact on long-term leadership behavior. Trauma-informed leaders accept that people, including themselves, will struggle and sometimes suffer from past and current traumatic experience. And again, this is where I speak from my own experience. The characteristics of toxic leaders demonstrated within or at the helm of organizations very often goes to past psychological wounding. Wounded leaders can be at the helm of organizations with very high employee attrition, toxic cultures, and very unsustainable business practices. And I guess it's not a real big surprise that you find a lot of leaders, professionals with traumatized backgrounds in high performance and high competitive environments. Why? Because it is probably still one of the most standard strategies to retreat to if you are traumatized, to compensate, to project, and to essentially disguise a lot of your traumas through impersonation, through narcissistic behavior, but again, through a lot of performance. And I'm not saying, by the way, that everyone who's a high-performing or high-competitive leader is automatically traumatized. So in that spirit, it would make sense that healing past trauma is imperative to becoming a more effective and conscious leader. By starting on that journey towards healing, it is easier to develop greater self-awareness, self-mastery, empathy, resilience, perseverance, and more profound, a sense of consciousness for all stakeholders. It is a pathway from moving from your wounded space to your actual essence, where you spend more focus on being rather on doing. Another way of looking at it is that the trauma-informed leader is a healing leader who creates healing organizations. Trauma-responsive organizations call for a creative culture where people feel safe, seen, heard, respected, and have a sense of belonging. That sense of inclusive belonging is necessary to change the narrative from fear-based command and control, exclusively profit-focused leadership, to new focus on what I call the triple bottom line: people, planet, and profit, that all play out on the same level playing field. The benefit of being a conscious leader or a trauma-informed leader is that it allows self-regulation. It allows you to self-regulate your emotions, respond with empathy, and act with intent. It gives you more emotional literacy. The ability to understand and manage that behavior, their reactions to feelings and things happening around them are a function of how you behave as a leader. Research shows that self-regulated leadership actually leads to more productivity and to more team performance. On a final note, I'm incredibly excited to see how conscious leadership is finding its way more and more into the executive level of companies, creating more organizations based on collective values, trust, purpose, and openness. And I think it is also, and this is where I hope we can talk a little bit more about in the panel, I think it's also creating an environment where we will see more conscious expanding practices. I think the key will be to take baby steps of integration and trying conscious leaderships in every aspect of life, as well in the body, mind, spirit experience. And I think it's also important that we understand it's not going to happen overnight. We need to find those leaders that are open to this kind of thinking, that can role model for others to then follow suit and become a movement. I am, on that same note, cautiously realistic about the fact that it will take time. The barriers to entry and the mindsets, if you ever have dealt with HR executives, is still quite high, but I think it's worth it. And I hope we'll have more time to discuss that. Thank you very much. And great to be here. Thanks.
So while I'll kill you with PowerPoint, basically doing exactly what you shouldn't be doing, and of course this causes this. So I just learned how to tell an amazing story and hold a great speech. And I must say, I've actually learned from the best how to do that. I'm still a dabbling apprentice. And now I have found a new master on how to do this. But I love it, the conscious leadership is the topic of both your presentations. And this works. Does it work? Yep, excellent. And before I go to my presentation, I would like to see how many native English or non-German speakers are in the room. Hands up. Excellent, that's half. So I'd like to introduce you to a new term that Henrik will be pioneering, introducing to the world, just as BMW did with Fahrvergnügen, and to my surprise, made all Americans know and even pronounce it correctly, even with 2 dots on the U. So the new term, and this correlates directly with conscious leadership, is Bewusstseinskultur. All right, so let's give this a try.
Should I do it?
You do that. Come on, Henrik, it's your turn, please.
Yeah. So it's all about improvisation. So there is not only Bewusstseinskultur as a new term that everybody should at least tackle with a little bit. When I once read the New York Times a few years ago, I found a very nice heading that went like, "The Great Kladderadatsch," which even the Germans do not know what it means, but it's a wonderful word for that something is more translated. Something is happening, a performance, it's stirring up stuff, yeah? And I think Bewusstseinskultur is exactly not the great Kladderadatsch. No. Bewusstseinskultur is something very fine-tuned to what we do with our consciousness. It's looking for those states of mind that are ethical, that are serving the purpose of our growth, that are serving the purpose of the growth of others. Finding these ethical states of minds and then cultivating them in the life that you are living, in your families, or in the business you are building, or in the science organization that So it's a three-step actually. Looking into yourself and into the states of mind that you're in, finding those that are worthwhile cultivating. Second, cultivating them. And maybe thirdly, building institutions that help people to cultivate them. Because we feel very bad actually sticking to our plans of cultivating. Who is getting up at 4:45? Very few people are, and even Daphne, I guess, from time to time is missing out. Yeah. So this is Bewusstseinskultur that Thomas Metzinger tomorrow will walk me. And now I give it back.
Thank you. Well, as you can see, the Argonauts is a company that Loes on the board of, and my private investment company is called Argo, for good reason, because the Argonauts were one of the founding myths of our Western culture. And the amazing thing is with the Greeks, they actually thought through stuff that we just now rediscover. We put science and scientific data to it, but at the end of the day, we're reinventing the wheel and say, oh, damn it, they were already there. So the Argonauts is, to make it very short, and it goes along with Bewusstseinskultur, is you assembled, or that guy Jason assembled 50 of the greatest mythological Greek heroes to come to a beach, amongst them Hercules. So what are you going to tell a Hercules? He's a demi-god, right? He's the absolute hero, but he's a me hero. Now it is about to find the golden fleece, the metaphorical fulfillment in life. So now you have to get on a ship, all those 50 guys. And now it's not about the me hero anymore, that is the strongest in their own terms. Now it's about becoming a we hero, a group coherence, to row in synchronicity and coherence. And if you don't do that, well, that ship is not going to be fast. And there were several challenges that showed if that ship is not the fastest, it will be crushed. And bye-bye fulfillment life, bye-bye golden fleece. So it's all about the going from the me to the we. And that's really what this is about. And Bewusstseinskultur is such a great word, and how it correlates with conscious leadership. There's one advantage of German, this pretty complex language, over English, because we can just put words together, like Bewusstsein. There's actually two words, other than consciousness, which English has from Latin. And so it's more than culture of consciousness. That would be the direct translation. It is Bewusstsein, it's actually becoming aware of being of yourself, which is the closest to the gnothizeiton, the Apollonian imperative of the Greeks. Find out what it means to be human. Know yourself. So conscious leadership and Bewusstseinskultur for me is really about finding a new operating system for human interaction. That's really what we're talking about, because that's when we become aware of and consciously aware of who we are amongst each other, just as Nikki beautifully detailed what change in leadership style and what change that has to the outside world, your private world, your family, your organization, your community, and thereby ripple through the planet, it is huge. So let me tell you my personal story. My personal story is to be in that dichotomy, transactional versus transformational. And just my personal background, I'm a German lawyer, son of a German lawyer. That's the narrative I was born into. Oh, nice. Don't we love this? Don't do this to me. Nope, he does it to me. All right, anyways. Transactional versus transformational. So being a son of a German lawyer, and that goes back a lineage, simply means it is as left brain as it can possibly be. And that means I was in that world of human doing versus human being, and my belief system was, you just gotta do more, achieve more, and then you will be loved and be enough. And the human being, that comes later. So meet the guy who I believed was my boss, even the God that I prayed to. That was the human doing. It's about a 50-year-old picture. The Homo economicus, Mr. Achiever. Oh boy, I haven't worn that suit in a long time. And definitely not that tie, really. So the human doing, the Homo economicus, is basically believes in, well, everything is measurable, everything is logical, everything can be, well, all you need is exchange information, and then people know, then people connect, and people are together, right? Here's my spreadsheet, give me your spreadsheet, we compare the numbers, done. And I loved it. There's even a formula for it. That is the official formula of the Homo economicus, and guess where it comes from? Of course, Chicago School of Business. Where else? And those formulas always work until they don't. Until something happens, and that's usually called life. When these white swans that you can put in great algorithms, all of a sudden leave, and something comes in that shouldn't exist, a black swan. And then that formula crumbles, because life is far more than an algorithm. The absurdity to believe to download a human brain into the internet or just exchange it through AI. We don't have a brain, and we don't have a body. We are a body. And that is not put into formulas or in algorithms and not in AI. That is hocus pocus, to use another German great word that I love. So I basically, when my black swan came in, flying in, I was actually at the peak of my personal success. In 10 years, I built two of them together with Nikki, $2 billion companies, and billion turnover and reaching people and valuation, yada, yada. Summer 2008, I was a billionaire on paper. November 2008, not so much. The black swan of all black swans came in, which I thought until the pandemic hit. Lehman Brothers went under. And with it, mine balance sheet. And I was down to minus 50 million. So I had to meet my real boss. And that, I can tell you, it's kind of ridiculous, because in a room of professional psychologists, psychiatrists, therapists, you go like, duh. But the world that I come from, this is a revelation that my real boss is this. What? And that's when I discovered Daniel Kahneman's basically greatest quote is say, we're all emotional beings, and we use logic to justify our emotions. Tell that to a German lawyer. No, it's facts. And there's even a bigger boss. The crazy ape, King Louis, inside of all of us, definitely inside of me, dancing to the tunes of these emotions. Ababa doop doop doop, he said. Whoever remembers the Jungle Book. And boy. And yeah, he creates some kind of hallucinations that I interpret as reality and can't believe that the real reality does not comply with my reality. And that can't be, because I'm right? As a Homo economicus, as a Mr. Factional Knowledge. But interestingly, who does he dance with? Just in the Jungle Book with Mowgli, he dances with this guy, who is the real boss. The afraid little boy in a grown man's body. That is the true boss of 99.9% of all DAX boards or NASDAQ board members, mostly male. And no one, and I, first and foremost, did not recognize that I was basically ruled by that guy and his traumata. Not understanding that where both my superpowers and my kryptonite comes from. Being completely unaware of it, meaning completely unconscious. So when shit hit the fan, and I was from master of the universe down to, holy shit, how am I going to pay my rent and the school for my children? I came from that space only, not knowing what to do with it. So I went to a neurobiologist friend, and I said, all right, help me out here. You're a psychologist, neurobiologist, you wrote about this stuff. What's it? I say, okay, come on, it's really simple. What you feel is, that's how we're hardwired. we are primarily hardwired to, well, again, pros like you, it's like, duh, for me, woo, to fear. We run around, and I run around like the saber-toothed tiger is still around the corner, wants to eat me. Stored in my amygdala, and that is 1,000 times, million times faster than my Homo sapiens brain that I was, Mr. Spock, so proud of. But I still thought all I need to add, I was in the middle actually also of my PhD thesis, I need another PhD. I've already 3 university degrees. I need a PhD and a Harvard MBA to finally be accepted. And now I understood that belief system came from that space, running away from the saber-toothed tiger. So he said, well, you got to look inside. Your inner game does not match your outer game. And there is no outer development without the inner to hold it. And I was like, what is even inner development? Well, going back to the Greeks, why I love the word psychedelic, the manifestation of the soul, or better actually, the word psyche. The soul is kind of, well, has a Christian connotation to it. The psyche is actually at the whole inner world. And that means how to become a conscious leader. And so I said, all right, I got my neurobiologist saying something, my psychologist. What does a philosopher say? So I went to a philosopher friend of mine and said, what is this actually? And I said, well, not only would you get a Nobel Prize if you can find out what it is, but my philosophical definition is a simple one. First of all, it is the absolute human privilege. It is what makes us distinct from the rest of the animal kingdom, and I say the rest of, because we're part of this, but we have this one privilege. We have that unique capacity to relate to ourselves. That is what King Louis can do, and the little afraid boy cannot do. When we truly grow up and there's a man inside a man's body, that's when we have the ability to go to that unique capacity and be relational, be aware. And actually you said, well, there's a simple exercise to it. Just take a blank piece of paper and draw a line. I said, okay, what do you mean? Come on, life is far more complicated. I said, yes, life is complicated, but actually, at the same time, it's not. So when you become conscious, all it actually means is, can you locate yourself at any given moment? And locate means, where are you internally, emotionally? How do you actually interpret emotions, which are actually enough but energy emotion turned into interpretation mode into feelings, which is already the King Louis in me trying to make sense of it, but mostly dancing along with Mowgli. And simply say, okay, can you locate yourself? Are you above or below the line? Which means, psychologically, are you in a deficiency state, Maslow, or in a growth state of mind? Or philosophically, are you still in Plato's cave looking at the shadows of the wall, misinterpreting it for reality? Or do you have the courage, do you have the guts, do you have the stamina, the resilience to turn around and crawl back up and see where the light actually emits from that creates these shadows of, most of the time, the dancing ape? Because when you're in deficiency, you act from fear, and that is just a reaction, mostly projected, but it means that you're in survival mode, Stefan. And that means it's all about you. There's nothing else. You cannot connect, relate to people anymore. You're completely unconscious in your ability to actually see that life is not happening to you, but through you and as you. And well, there's a way to get to this growth state. And actually it's an R. It's a nice acronym. It stands for awareness, to be aware of this, then to be responsible, take full responsibility. It's a great word, English word, because it also means to respond. And do that with empathy, because then you go to a place of love, or pure curiosity for life. It's not the love for one, it's the love of life. And that's the place of creation, or better, co-creation, because that co-creation happens in the space of we. And that is the true abundant space. And then you know how to differentiate between the outer world, that's the world of success, and the inner world, that's the world of fulfillment, and how to harmonize both. Because he also said, that really stuck with me, you know, no matter how successful you will maybe become one day again, and if you get a whole balance sheet back, it doesn't matter, because even that, without fulfillment, the ultimate failure is success without fulfillment. That stuck with me. Wow. There's a caveat, there's a challenge that we're all in. We're all into this together, hence Bewusstseinskultur. Bewusstsein, become conscious about a system that we're in that is by design transactional, mechanistic, and logic-based. That's the world of the Homo economicus. Ever since Descartes, but it's only 400 years old, that thinking concept. So we can change it. It's just 400 years old, just after the religious wars of the 17th centuries was answered that. But it is deficient by design, both psychologically and biochemically. It just lives biochemically with dopamine, testosterone, and even serotonin is not even introduced to our system enough. Hence, we have a huge pharmaceutical SSRI industry. And we know that doesn't work anymore. And I'm actually quoting one of the co-founders of the Mind Foundation that really stuck with me when he said that as a professor in that field. And I said, wow, we really need to find a new way because nothing works. So what it is about, it's about upgrading the human operating system. And the true game changer in that is the transformation, expansion of our consciousness. Without definition, the human interaction in a different way with awareness, responsibility, and empathy. So to be able to finally go from the transactional ego to the transformational we-go. So let's feel the difference. This is what the transactional worldview of the Homo economicus actually feels like. And this is me. It is, whoever grew up in the 70s, 80s could know exactly who that is. But actually, it's just a representative of me, because the who I was, independent of my age, I came across in black and white as an old white dude, not reaching people anymore in the heart, and how that sounds is.
Heute hat mich aus dem Frankfurter Zoo ein Tapirkind mit hierher begleitet. Es trägt noch sein Jugendkleid, es ist 6 Wochen alt.
Very emotional, very enthusiastic, really reaching the hearts of everyone. That is the human doing communication. That is the standard communication in every corporate environment. Just think of yourself as a corporate employee that has to reach KPIs and the CFO announces the next goals. That's what everyone feels. But luckily, and that was my aha moment, we were introduced, basically invited by life with a huge aha moment that changed our lives to what it means to be conscious leadership without knowing that it actually happened. But we had the chance to produce an amazing documentary feature called Planet Earth, Unsere Erde in German, and literally saw when it happened that it changed the Bewusstsein, the consciousness of people, and changed the human interaction, hence the conversation. Because we are first and foremost a conversational species, and then we needed an environment of belonging, and this is how it feels like. That's what happens. Consciousness takes over and you see the world never as you've seen it before. Thank you.
So is it on? Yeah? Thank you, all the presenters for your presentations. Thank you, audience, for being here. So now we're going to have a panel discussion, but I guess it's a discussion with the audience, yeah? And I'm just starting the thing, and grant me the first question, please. So the first question goes to the audience. Do you want to start in a German way, a little bit more pessimistic, and then working our way towards a more optimistic view? Or do you want to start with an optimistic view and breaking the house down? The first one? The zweite, yeah. So, but of course, we are on a scientific conference. We're not breaking the house down, but I mean scientific reasoning that comes with business always has to care for the critical too. Yeah. So, my first question to all of you is: what would we have to do to make conscious leadership something that is really efficient, has an impact that really does something worthwhile in the sense of sustainability, and is not just a cover-up story for more extractive capitalism?
Okay, is this loud enough? By the way, before I actually address that question, I love the term Bewusstseinskultur. I think it has the potential to become the next zeitgeist. And it reminds me of a refrigerator magnet that I recently saw where it said, tell someone you love them today because life is too short, but scream it at them in German because life is terribly confusing and terrifying. Just a little side note. No, but to your question, Henrik, and I think that is probably the key question to ask because, you know, a lot of what we talk about when we address conscious leadership sounds like theory, and I mean, it's a great vision, but when we look at our actual environment, also when I look at executives, leaders who practice psychedelic experiences, how they go into that state, but then next Monday, when they show up in their office, turn into completely different animals. And I think what also research has shown us, that's the work that also, by the way, the Argonauts have really committed themselves to, on a side note, is that there is a small group of, if you actually look at organizations, it takes about 7% on average of your workforce or the organization to start creating, you know, what I would refer to as a marching army that at some point becomes a movement where they have visibility, they have the credibility to say, I'm doing this, I'm committing to that. I'm not somewhere out in the voodoo corner of, you know, here's the crazy guy called Nikki and he's doing some of these practices, but you actually become acknowledged by the leadership, by the organization of going a maybe even more unconventional route. And then at some point, they become more and more and more. And finding that's what I refer to as role modeling, practicing it in every aspect of your everyday life, and then being a beacon to other people that allows you then to, or allows them to follow suit at some point. And then I think on society, generally, it's 15%. So it is really, you know, finding these multipliers, credible people that can take this into the realm that so far I think is just very biased and still has issues, really accepting that there's a different way than, you know, the black and white gentleman we saw trying to describe the cute little animal.
We're getting into the direction. Do you want to follow up, or are we taking it to the audience? Yeah. Yeah. So we're getting into the direction of a change theory. We're not yet there, I think. I heard a lot, I don't know what you heard, about the one by one that also Rick Doblin is propagating. So if everybody would take MDMA, well, we would have love and peace. Yeah. Yeah. So do we have the time? Tomorrow you will meet Thomas Metzinger with a deeply pessimistic view. Yeah. Will we have the time to wait for this to happen until every leader will finally, through maybe a not success story, come to that insight?
I would actually like to hand over to Loes with that question, because that is, for me, is system therapy at work, and not just in a one-to-one setting, actually in the business setting where it truly belongs. So as a system therapist, I mean, your slogan with the Argonauts is change the conversation, change a space of psychological trust and safety where true conversations that truly matter can happen. And then you change the world one conversation at the time. So as a system therapist, what do you see in organizations and with business leaders that you work for?
For sure. Well, maybe before I go there, what I find really beautiful today is that I think 25 years ago when I was studying, the professor said, Loes, no, please stop talking about spirituality. You can't do that, before you know it, you're out of the university, kicked out. That was like an absolutely no-go. And now 25 years later, to just see on a daily basis that board members, executives are actually going through psychedelic journeys. And like the main question on any reception of a business network is, what's the right amount? Or how often should I actually go and have this kind of journeys? That seems to be starting to be normal, I think, also, due to a lot of the people here in the room. So I think what we are noticing is that, system change, that's a big topic. And actually, I think it would be lovely to have collective wisdom here about that. I don't think anyone can hold any truth, right, with anything here. But I think maybe 3 insights here, at least for me, at least at work, would be the first one is, it's handy for conscious leaders to be interested in system awareness in general. So instead of just self-awareness is how can I connect with a bigger picture? And that I think is already a very big item on itself. Second item would be how do we create conversational spaces within companies, but also within society, where it's okay to be vulnerable and how to reflect on yourself and doing that together, and that it starts to be a norm to do that together. And I think also in our experiences within the Argonauts, there is actually a good space for that. Also within HR, that's to create in a very normal way conversational spaces of trust and to have reflective spaces. And I think the third one would be to go, instead of only being busy, and again, it's a tough subject, from being reactive, solving problems, how can we co-create futures together and daring to be courageous to experiment and maybe even to fail and having mistakes within that. I think for me at least 3 core insights.
Thank you. So let's give it to the audience. So what are your questions? What are your remarks? Yeah, Corky.
This was really great. Let me throw this out. How do you get conscious leaders to run a country? I'm American. We have anything but conscious leaders there on all levels, the federal level, the state level, and the local level. How do you make that transformation occur?
You know what? You just talked to the constitutional lawyer in me. There's 2 different paradigms between Europe and America that is mostly hidden under the radar screen. US was founded 250 years ago under a paradigm of pursuit of happiness, which by definition is the me happiness. And just have enough me happiness around, we'll have a collective happiness. That's the theory of that's a utilitarian thinking model of the world. Europe and Germany, actually the first sentence of the constitution of this country and of the European Charter of Human Rights is all about human dignity as the highest good, as the highest asset that has to be protected at all costs. That's what the sentence says. And human dignity is by definition the we happiness. And that changes everything right there. So so basically, I would say start at the thinking paradigm, and this is not so big of a task when you think, because just think of this country. We changed our thinking paradigm 4 times in 100 years, completely to the opposite, and it's manageable while still staying at a solid foundational structure. I mean, changing from imperialistic Kaiser thinking to a test of democracy to fascism to Stalinism and then back to democracy and still be something you can call a culture. So it is possible. That's the high level answer. The low level, the other level is I truly believe wholeheartedly it's one conversation at a time. We are a conversational species and we are a tribal species. So we need a space of a special space where we can have the conversations that truly matter. Actually, the 2% conversations that we usually don't hold, the normal societal script and especially the economical script goes to the human doing side, right? We are all trained in finding answers to problems, to finding solutions, to giving advice. And the second we do that, every neurobiologist will tell you oxytocin goes out. So these spaces and implement them, organizations with a ripple effect, that's where it starts. And then it goes up and down, so from high level to low level. Sorry for the prolonged answer.
Thank you for the talk. In our history of our economy, we found certain best practices, how to deal with things, how to organize work. And these best practices had certain metrics. And one of the best metrics is the profitability of a company. So for something like Bewusstseinskultur, it appears to me that we don't have best practices yet. So what would be a metric? Maybe it's profitability, or what would be the metric to find these best practices for something like Bewusstseinskultur?
Can I quickly answer that? The inventor of the GDP said, do not use this as a base of best practices. It is unusable for that. And we are doing exactly that. Hence, all our balance sheets, the whole capital market is defining growth by quantitative growth. And that's when you're in a corporate setting. Actually, we wanted to invite a friend of mine who was at the board of a very, very big company. And he couldn't because he has a serious issue right now, not meeting the KPIs of the quarter. So the answer is change, and it is actually happening already on a broad scale. If we change the definition on how to create balance sheets, either big public ones, GDP, or companies, or in companies, that we don't, for example, measure when I destroy that window, it actually, there's something destroyed. But in GDP or in the quantitative growth approach, what counts is now I have to buy a new window, someone has to install it, so wow, that grows it, right? So the qualitative measurement of what actually the cost of exploitation really means to the world and to us as humans, when that gets factored in, it changes everything in lightning speed.
So that's a political process, is it? So
it's both a political and economical process on a large scale.
Alternatives to the GDP have been in the world for decades. Amartya Sen built the Human Development Index. The former French president proposed it, but it just didn't make it through the political process. So we would have to organize a political process that would bring that as an alternative into the space, correctly?
Create Bewusstseinskultur for that to be done.
I also have a question. So on the one side, there's the people who are really the leaders who are conscious, who are aware, who are interested, and they are easier to tackle. But how do we get to the leaders who climbed up the ladder over years, maybe in engineering heavy organizations, who really stuck to this logical framework and who don't see the necessity for a conscious leadership model? How do we get to them?
I think if I may start answering it, but I would like to pass it on to you just to give you an example. So all of us know each other from an organization, it's called YPO. And this organization has a format which is called a forum, which is a trusted space where you have leaders together of about 7 to 10 people who in that trusted space share everything about their personal lives, their families, their business, and so on and so forth. And why was this ingrained? Because leaders realized, well, I don't have anyone to talk to. So going back to a personal story, I see my husband being in one of his forums, who is a nuclear scientist, and I can tell you he's not such a very conscious leader yet. Over time, I see quite some personal change. And I think it is a matter of finding these ways or these pathways to have trustful conversations. And even if you at the top have people who are not yet there, I think there is hope. And there are opportunities to create these spaces. And that is one of the tools that need to be clearer, more open in exactly these organizations, to have the conversations that matter, to share what is going on in your life, and may that be good or like the 5% best and the 5% worst. And we all have it. It takes a process, though, to open up, obviously, to really indulge in this conversation. But I think over time, if we take that time, it really shifts. But maybe you can even...
This actually builds on the previous question. Thank you. I would like to ask you to come to a micro level with this question. Imagine that you're at a corporate event, you're mixing with your peers, you spy one, you get into a space where you're going to have a conversation with Homo economicus toxicus, and maybe you're spreading this beautiful shift that we've been talking about. How do you begin the conversation? Literally, what do you ask that person or say to get their attention?
I love it, because my real answer is, damn, it's a tough work to get this done. I wish we had a magical stick to make it work, but the reality also of my work is half of the room is, let's call it now, very expert, or I don't believe in any trust, or please don't come and talk about conversations or any of this. I don't have time for it, there is no outcome. And the other half of the group is actually into transformation. It's a very, very difficult conversation. So I do see a lot of top-down decisions going through here. So it's not that I want to do it, but my boss wants me to do it, and now I'm going to sit there and do a good job. So give me some tools, and maybe I can learn to become a little bit more active listening, or know how to do it. And then very quickly you need to prove with data that taking that time and doing that effort is actually going to lead to something positive. So I would say the quicker you get with the transformational people in the organization into some form of experimentation that actually leads to actions where it's, oh wow, something is changing, then the interest is there. So no easy answer for me in this case. It's very difficult, that's the reality, and I choose to work with conscious leaders on purpose, because otherwise I'm just struggling myself through it. But the idea that there is something of our combined intellects that is bigger than the individual does seem to be interesting. Yeah. So how can we access that one?
Thank you very much for the amazing panel. My question is, there's a lot of, obviously you've got diversity of ages here, different age groups. Now, you've got to reach a lot of the people who are already in leadership positions who are of a certain age or whatever. I'm 41. But then you've also got the next generation of leaders coming through various different age groups, and some of them are here. How would you maybe implement, maybe through leadership education, etc.? What is your vision to empower the next group of leaders with Bewusstseinskultur?
It's fascinating. We're working with a very big company here, and actually, I can say it's Siemens Energy. And they just introduced something incredible called the Global Mental Health Campaign. And that was revolutionary, because they literally had their leadership up to the CFO openly admitting on video in the net, saying, I'm struggling with burnout, depressions, etc. 10 years ago or 15 years ago, when I was still in the legal space, the alarm would have gone off with every single law firm all over the planet. And oh my God, governance, best practices would have been up bazoo. The CFO would have not been CFO within 5 minutes any longer, because you would expect the call from the SEC saying, are you kidding? A depressed CFO? That doesn't work. And at the same time, the culture within the company, of course, I mean, it's a 175 years company. German engineering, B2B, big business driven. So to change that is something. But what we see, so that campaign already is mind-blowing, and what kind of different conversation it triggers. But then when you put it into the culture, then you see, I would say, 3 kind of generational communication challenges going on. It's just to stay in the cliche, the white man 45 plus, my generation. We are, what I presented, so conditioned in the human doing world that especially when going gets tough, we say, just power through, ignore feelings. You know there's no such thing as depression or burnout. Just gotta go solve the problem and get the results. That is then going to the extreme opposite. Then you have kind of a middle ground, very much led by the women in the organization, that say, oh, damn, we would really like to be different, but I have to feed my kids at home, and so I surrender. And then you have the next generation, up to 30. They openly say, and actually can quote it, say, wow, what you created, that space, they're referring to a workshop we did, that went south with a 45 plus. They couldn't handle it. They said, oh my God, I'm so out of my comfort zone. I can't share vulnerably. Are you kidding me? And the young guy said, finally, we could have the real conversations. Finally, we could really talk. Finally, we had an example of what it means to be an empathetic leader. I hope they get the message. That was a direct quote from a 26-year-old, super smart, super talented guy. And that generation openly says it and says, guys, if you don't do this fast, I'm gone. And no company anymore in this day and age can afford to lose that generation.
And adding to that, going a little bit deeper, if we were to imagine a schooling system where kids learn empathy, that's what I see with my children. They actively try to build empathy, to speak about their feelings. Then you already start building a bit, or like helping children to evolve later on into leaders who are actually capable of taking this on. And I think, we're at a tipping point in our society anyway. I think this transformational shift in the education beat from early on in primary school, but also within universities and later on in corporates, that is what needs to happen.
So Daphne, it's not only one by one. So it's changing institutions. That's politics.
Yes.
So it's not so different from what we heard in the last decades. Yeah, there's also politics. Because this is what any politician from the German right wing and left wing have said in the last 50 years, of course. Let's change the educational system, everything will become better. But
they don't put it into practice.
Yes, of course.
They do not
of course.
Put it into practice.
That's what politics is. You need to put it in practice. Yeah.
Yes.
So I think we have 2, maybe 3 more.
Hi. I just resonate with your answer with the 26-year-old guy. I'm 27. And for me, you talked about the logic. And for me, it's very logical to have this transformation, like use psilocybin instead of alcohol and like open up to emotions, lower the rates of depression. So it's just useful for business as well. So my question is, so I don't think it's a rational problem. I think it's clearly an emotional problem, because on the rational side, it's very clear, in my opinion. So do you think there will be a way for maybe, the older generation to open up like you did to the emotional awareness, or will it just take 10, 20 years to change the generation, and then the shift will get more speed? Yeah, because I have the feeling, I'm not sure if we have the time, and that's why I think this question is very interesting for me.
Right. So first of all, I tip my hat, and you're absolutely right. That's a perfect representation of your generation. They think like, duh, what are we even talking about? It's totally logical. What else? Anyway, really? And then you have my generation. They go like, what are you talking about? This is no. I'm quote, I'm so out of my comfort zone, Let me get back to my Excel spreadsheet. Let me go back to my to-do list. Let's just be active and completely blink that out. So, and there's actually great statistics. It comes from the Adult Development School of Psychology from Harvard, Robert Keegan's work, Susan de Gruyter. And the stats are pretty phenomenal. And on the positive side, it grows, meaning Keegan 20 years ago said 75% of the population will never look at or change the narrative that they were born into. That's the blueprint, I stick to it, I'll die with it. 25% say, there's got to be something else. Half of that will go at it cognitively. So basically, there's an iceberg model. There's a Johari window. They get a coach, but don't dare to add true emotional experiences in it. Now I'm talking to guys like me that 15 years ago met Tony Robbins and then went to David Destiny with Tony Robbins and said, oh my God, this is how the world works. And then say, that's just the beginning of a long journey. And interestingly, and now comparing the generations, your generation seems to be almost at the 50%, where my generation is more at the 5% level of people that really connect the cognitive with the emotional experience and want to bring that to action. That also goes to the question that the lady behind you had. How do you do that in a setting? My approach is, no matter who I talk to, and luckily I'm at that age that I can talk to any C-suite globally and basically eye to eye, but I go deliberately to the vulnerable conversation. I start always with myself. Here's my fuck up. Here's what doesn't function. I do not say, here's my great achievement. Here's my car. Here's my whatever. And that throws them out of their comfort zone. But it's absolutely fascinating how fast a true human conversation, even in the most corporate setting, happens.
Yeah, and maybe one. Oh yeah, that's it. And maybe one more interesting little detail of the same research of adult development is that normally, ideal circumstances, 5 to 7 years, you will transform. Your consciousness will shift due to life, pain, etc. You know that a good developmental program can speed it up to 1 year. So that's enough hope to go for it, right?
Yes, I'm from Silicon Valley, and the amount of microdosing that is happening right now with younger folks in business is very prevalent. And for undergraduates at US universities, any kind of psychedelics is available and is being taken, and the kids guide each other through their journeys. So there's a tremendous groundswell of consciousness that's rising. And I think that one other important development is AI. With AI becoming so much better left brain than any human can be, I'm looking at the people that have been so proud of their left brain development becoming humbled by what AI is able to do. And that the question, who are we as human beings, will be answered by, we are feeling human beings with meaning and with ability to reach out and care for each other. And that's the right side of the brain. So I think that we are at the beginning of a cultural revolution that is directed by AI, and that executives who are so well trained in the left brain hemisphere are facing, in my opinion, facing a real identity challenge. What is my contribution? And it will be about consciousness and leadership, because AI cannot provide consciousness as far as we know.
Thank you. I don't know if you want to remark on that. I would have a remark, which is also a last question to all of you. This is a science conference, and science is a lot about turning the object of your interest around in any direction, looking at the downsides, looking at the light and at the shadows. And so from what I heard in the last remarks, I would say, let's talk a little bit about the shadow of the word consciousness. I think it's an empty term. It's an empty term in the sense of Lakoff and Johnson. We are in this, or we are in this group projecting very positive values into that. And probably it's happening if very positively mooded and emotional beings are around, and others are like pushed over the edge and invited to go there too. But consciousness can go in any direction. So the neuroplasticity that is created on the physical level, it needs a learning context, a context. So this is my last question to you, no matter if I'm convincing anybody here. So how do we publicly have to organize psychedelic experience? Public in the public, to have a positive experience on the development of leaders. Background of that question, now a lot of people go to underground ceremonies. It's all in the illegal space, and this is shady to many. And we have, in these conferences, we have this group process, and everybody thinks, yeah, we know it's good, and so on now. But this is not a model for a public, let's talk business rollout or something. So how would that look like, that leaders could learn in psychedelic sessions, in the right direction?
Yeah, I thank you, beautiful. Yeah, I'd like to react at least from mine, and then I will hand it over to the rest here as well. I think the fear is pretty big. So if I just look at the business leaders, that almost everybody's, not almost, let's say half of them are interested, but there's a lot of fear, like to whom do I go and how do I know it's real, and if the shaman is a good one, or etc. And then the other one is, how do I integrate all of this? Because I think what you said is very right. It can go up, it can go down, it can be good, it can go wrong. And as well, I think what I see a lot with the leaders that I know is a lot of things are getting opened, and then you go back on Monday to your work desk, and the reality of the system is not ready. Or, oh my gosh, now I actually really see what is possible, but I'm not myself not able to go there. So the shadow side is present, say it like that. And I think, for me at least, key to for any business rollout to have very professional setup processes with people that are doing it and are equipped to do it. And then the integration part is the conversation is just starting afterwards. So to then come together with business leaders in a conversation, what do I now do with this? And what do I do with the fact that I feel all of these other sides within myself, or that I cannot go now inside of my company, actually bring the change that I know is needed, and all the guilt that is surrounding with that. So for me, the answer would be in very professional setup, and to integrate it well, to have, circles or whatever you call it, conversations with leaders, with themselves, with each other, to talk about the integration of it. Nikki.
Well, what I think is actually interesting when you look at public perception, and a lot of the people that I speak to that don't go to these kind of conferences, it's still sort of the perception of psychedelics as a drug, right? And they understand their kids do it in parties, they go out. And I think one of the big moments or elements of leverage is education, is that you understand that how important it is in therapeutic work, trauma work. And it's also been interesting that even people that are really well educated, that the misperceptions and conceptions they still have, then I tell them about how particularly, in the US and, other parts of the world, psychedelic-based trauma work is, on the forefront. It's starting to replace the typical pharma antidepressant space. And I think the more you have people understand, it's, even if you use words like plant medicine, going back a couple of 1,000 years, it's a different context you're creating than what people still think. It's drugs. It's a way of removing yourself from reality and not understanding that it's not only about consciousness, it's about higher conscious, it's about subconscious, it's about essentially what you do with meditative practices, only in a different framework. And I think it's also about the settings. If you have an opportunity to show that it's not only just about the psychedelic substance, but pairing it with doing the work, the contents, the spiritual work, then it gets a different kind of credibility, and then it's about continuously reiterating on that. And I think it's part of politics needs to do that, industries need to do that, initiatives need to do that, school and education. I think that's an important part of looking at this from multiple angles and pushing it, and not giving up.
For me, the answer is when we look back, our thinking model of the world started actually in the 4th century when the Catholic Church merged with the Roman Empire and created, monotheism as we know it. And that then, after the religious wars of the 17th century, got amplified to the Cartesian model. I think, therefore I am, Descartes' famous quote. And that creates the thinking model with the best practices. At the same time, there is something good about this, because best practices is needed. Because you need to create a space, and to me, absolutely based also on science and scientific research, that holds the vessel for the feeling, the emotional space, to be in tandem with one another. So my personal take on Descartes would now be, not I think, therefore I am, but we feel and think in harmony, therefore we are. That would be the next level. And in order to give the best practices, as the classic, especially religious institutions have lost and are losing more and more credibility, I believe that meaning-making layer that they held for almost 2,000 years now goes into the public space, and it should be run by organizations. They have production-making layers, admin-making layers, distribution-making layers. They got all layers, but a meaning-making layer. So where's the space for trust and purpose, fueled by the conversations that truly matter, that create the meaning, the purpose, that we then not outsource anymore to an institution that tells us, suffer now and get rewarded once you're dead. But be present, be here, be enthusiastic, or as the Greeks said, entheos, have the divine in you at the moment, at your choosing. So be basically, a subject with the gods and not an object to a god. Would be my point of that.
Daphne, can you do what Stefan did in one sentence?
No, you're challenging me.
Yes.
I guess, in summary, it is a matter of creating a guided space from an early stage, guiding people into an experience, guiding them into an experience, and then having the guidance afterwards to then not only have the feeling of oneness, of going together through an experience, but then also having the opportunity to really integrate that into life. Stop. Summary.
Thank you very much for a fascinating panel. Of course, this is the beginning of something, a conversation. It has to go on, it has to become more concrete. As one of the organizers of the conference, I want to point you to a little thing that we implemented this morning. At the foyer, at the stairs, you find a little box. It's called Naive Questions. So Helen will attend to them this afternoon at 4. Put one or the other naive question into it, please. And enjoy your lunch. Thank you very much.